all about the metric system. And I have another screen I want to show you here in a minute. But let's start with, what do we remember about the metric system, okay? So I'm going to start with a kilometer. Does anyone know how many meters are in a kilometer? I'm going to give you a hint. Let's write this word. Kilometer. Everybody write it right now. And I want you to underline the prefix. Did you write it? Okay. I'll call on you after you write it. So, Lillian, what do you think that prefix means? You're close. Okay, it's a power of 10. She's on the right track. It's a power of 10. So this means 1,000. Now, have you ever seen on YouTube where somebody got 43K likes? What do you think the K stands for? 1,000. Guess what word it is?
Kilo.
Yep. Got it? Okay, so did you write 1,000 underneath that? Go ahead, that prefix means 1,000. All right? So how many meters do you think are in 1 kilometer? 1,000. So go ahead and fill that in.
1,000.
I have a paper, Mrs. Lowry. Whatever. Better take this to her. Okay, so the next word, we're going to write it over here so we have more room. This is a kilogram.
It's 1,000.
Now, how do you know it's 1,000?
Because kilo.
Because kilo means 1,000, doesn't it? Okay. The next one might be a little trickier. Okay. Now, this word, and you're going to write it, so get busy. This is millimeter. No, it's not. It's milliliter. Sorry about that. It's milliliter. You see the capital L? It's important to use a capital L. So, now I'm going to ask you a question, okay? Put your hands down because you don't even know the question yet. So, how many years in a millennium? Cody? Good try. It kind of sounds like a million, doesn't it? What do you think, Lillian? How many years in a millennium? Ryder? Huh? No? Good try. Lower. Jaden? What? You're right. So you're going to use milliliters quite a bit in science class. She's got some beakers and some cylinders that you're going to be measuring milliliters with, okay? You would use milliliters more often in the medical field or some sort of science field, okay? We don't typically measure with tiny units of measurement, okay? Unless it's for our job. Now, the only way you're going to know this one is if you know it. Or, wait, let's write the word. Centimeter. Okay, somebody else. What do you think, Morgan? 100. Okay, how'd you come up with 100? Did you just know it from the meter stick? Okay, and that's one way to do it. Have you ever heard of a century? Yeah. It has the same prefix, sort of, C-E-T. Century, how many years do you think that is? 100 years, okay? So that sort of makes sense. Now what we're going to do is we're going to relate this to the place value chart.
No, you also had that problem, like how many centimeters are in 1 milliliter on one of your Google.
On my math review? Okay. So this next part, we're going to fill out a place value chart that relates to the metric system. Now, I'm going to show you the chart over here, okay? And I need to send this to you Google Classroom so you have it, all right? But I want to show you the metric system has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps on it. So 1 whole would be in the ones place. And in the metric system, we call 1 whole 1 unit. Can you write that up above, please? Okay, 1 unit. So right now we're going to be talking about length. And I don't know if you can tell this or not, but I've got 3 units of measurement on this poster. I've got length, weight, and volume. We're just talking about length today. So that's to the far left on the poster. Okay? So I'm going to start with 1 meter. And just do your best to fit it in there. Write it down. 1 meter. Okay? And I want to go all the way to the thousands place. Now, we know that one of those prefixes means 1,000. Hint, it's up here too. Kilo, okay? So that one is pronounced kilometer. So 1,000 meters, and you can abbreviate meters, okay, equals 1 kilometer. And I want you to write that one out for me, please. 1 kilometer. All right. Now, in 5th grade, we're only going to work with 3 of these when it comes to length. And I'll show you the whole chart here in just a second, okay? But we're also going to talk about the centimeter, and that is in the hundredths place. And it's 1/100th of a meter. It's smaller, isn't it? And you can tell by the stair steps on the metric system that they go from smaller to larger. Okay? This is called 1 centimeter. I almost fit it. 1/100th of a meter is 1 centimeter. Okay, now, I bet you can guess on the next one. 1,000th of a meter is called 1 millimeter. Now, these words are all around you, okay? At least the prefixes are. Want to talk a little bit more about the stair steps, okay? So basically, it's a lot like the place value chart. You need to have your eyes right here, okay? So if I start with the ones place, okay, I can get higher, which is larger, or I can get smaller, okay? So when I'm using the metric system, it's a little bit like the place value chart in each time I move to the right or the left, I'm either going to add a 0, take off a 0, hop the decimal one way, hop the decimal the other way. So let's write these in standard form. This would be 1. Standard form is no words. Did you write 1? Mm-hmm. What would this one be? 1,000. Now, this is where it gets a little trickier. What do you think standard form is here? There's 2 ways to write it. 1/100th as a fraction, or 1/100th as a decimal. Did you know that was coming? Yeah. Okay. Now do you understand what all these sticky notes are for up here? Yeah, finally makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, so now this one, the millimeter, 1,000th as a fraction, or, are you copying now? That's good. 1,000th as a decimal. And are these answers right in front of you? Yes. They are, right on your place value chart, okay? So that's how the metric system relates to the place value chart. Now I'm going to pause it for a minute and pull up the chart of the whole metric system, because I'm sure some of you want to see those stair steps in a bigger picture, okay? So this is a chart of the entire metric system, okay? And you can notice that our base unit, the ones place, is going to be a meter or a gram or a liter. And you'll notice I even put those 3 words in the same order on your poster, okay? That's all we're going to deal with. Then we're going to learn about the kilometer and the kilogram. We don't use kiloliter much. I haven't seen that in any of our word problems, but could I figure it out? What is it, Alan, what does the prefix kilo mean? 1,000, okay? I'm also going to use centa, which is the hundredths place, for centimeter, and that's all we use, just centimeter, okay? Are you listening? All right, we're going to use millimeter, milliliter. We don't use milligram much, but could you figure it out?
Yeah.
Or if you get a problem with milligram, could you know that milli means 1,000th of a gram? Good. The rest of these, though, we don't really use, but you might come across them in your life. So kilo, hecto, deca, your base unit, deci, centa, milli. Now, there's a little acronym to help you remember it. King, Hershey, you know, like the Hershey bar, died by drinking, what do you think he drank? Chocolate, get it? Hershey bar, milk. So this will help kids that need to memorize all of these. You're not to that point in your life yet. But can you think back to 5th grade math? K, H, D, B, D, C, M. King Hershey died by drinking chocolate milk. Okay. No, probably not. Okay.
Unless you drink.
Okay, so let's take a look at problem 1. And you should have this on your sheet. And it says, how many centimeters is equal to 2 meters? Well, first of all, let's label the number line. I'm going to label my end points. Now the 0 and 2 and 1 is in the middle. Now, if I were talking centimeters, and you're going to picture a meter stick in your head right now, that has 100 centimeters. So I would, and you don't have to write this, but we've got 100 centimeters here and 100 centimeters here. So tell me a multiplication sentence that I could use with a 2 in it to figure out the answer to this. If I know there are 100 centimeters in a meter, I can simply multiply 100 times 2. Now, how could I write the same thing, but instead of using 100, I use the exponent? So this is exponential form. 2 times 10 to the, how many zeros? Second equals 200. So how many centimeters equal 2 meters? 200 centimeters. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We're going to put it on a chart. And it says to use a meter strip, but we're not going to do it because we can do this in our head. We're really good. We have a decimal trick. So if I'm going from meters to millimeters, my units of measurement are getting larger or smaller. My units of measurement are getting smaller. However, there are more millimeters than there are centimeters, and there are more centimeters than there are meters. So when when I'm going from meters to millimeters, I have to multiply. So the first thing I want you to do is we're going to write a little cheat sheet. Meters to centimeters multiplied by 10 to the second. Okay? Meters to millimeters multiplied by, what do you think, 1,000 10 to the third. So we're going to try that. First thing I want to do is go ahead and go back to the 2 meters that we had on problem 1. And let's write 2 meters in the first box. And in the second box, we're going to multiply by what, boys and girls? 10 to the second. So 2 times 100 equals 200. And then for the third box, we're going to multiply by 10 to the third because we're going from meters to millimeters. So 2 times 1,000 equals 2,000. Pretty simple when we have all those zeros on the end. But what if we don't? If we don't have the zeros on the end, we have to use the trick that I just had you write down, plus the decimal trick. So let's get the decimal trick written down right now so it can be in our minds. All right, so let's take 1 37/100 of a meter. And let's put that on here. 1 37/100. And when I'm going from meters to centimeters, what do I multiply by? 10 to the second. So if I multiply 10 to the second, which is 100, which way does my decimal move, boys and girls? To the right. How many place values? 2. My exponent tells me how many place values. So the answer to how many centimeters are in 1 37/100 meters is 137. That's basically all we're doing today. We just have to multiply and divide and move the decimal. But we have a reason for doing it today because we're using measurement. So let's go on and let's go ahead and figure out how many millimeters are in 1 37/100 meters. So going back to the number, I can just rewrite it down here. I have room. You probably have room. And I'm going to multiply, because when I go from meters to millimeters, multiply by 10 to the third. So times 1,000. How many decimal place values? 3. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Now I kind of make that decimal larger to show me where it ended up. So I have 1370. And how do you say that number, boys and girls? 1,370. Okay, let's take a look at problem 2. And this is, if you'll notice, it's going from small units of measurement to a larger unit of measurement. However, even though these are smaller, and on the place value chart, we put millimeters in the thousands place, we're going to have to do a different operation than we think to get to meters. So, let's take a look at it. If I go from millimeters to meters, that's the opposite of what we did on the last page. What do you think I'm going to do? Divide by. Hey, let's start with centimeters so we have those the same on both charts. Because these are sort of our little cheat sheets. So centimeters to meters, I'm going to divide by, centi means what, boys and girls? 100, so it's 10 to the second power. If I go from millimeters to meters, and this is also called renaming. You might see this called renaming. I'm going to divide by, milli means what? 1,000. So I'll divide by 10 to the third. So let's start with the 2. The 2 meters. If I have 2,000 millimeters, and I want to figure out how many meters it is. I'm going to divide by what, boys and girls? 1,000. So my problem would look like this. 2,000 divided by 10 to the third. Well, 10 to the third has how many zeros? And so will I use a decimal trick on this one? No, I'm going to use a zero trick. So how many zeros can I cross off on 2,000? So from 2,000 millimeters, it becomes 2 meters. And I'm pretty sure that's what it said on the last page also. We had 2 meters here, and it was 2,000 millimeters. So now, if I take centimeters, we all know it's 200. Pretty much have that memorized by now. And I divide 200 by 100. What trick will I use? How many zeros will I cross off? And again, we get 2 meters. Okay, so let's try that with a different number this time. I'm going to put one up there we haven't done yet. Let's try it with 2,600 millimeters. So if I have 2,600 millimeters, how can I figure out how many meters I have? Well, if I go from millimeters and rename to meters, divide by 10 to the third, which is what number? 1,000. Can I use the zero trick? No, I can't, because I don't have enough zeros on 2,600. So what trick will I use? Decimal trick. I'm dividing by 1,000. Where does my decimal start out? The end of the number. And how many place values will I move it? 3. I'm going to make that one bigger so I know where my decimal goes. So I can have 2,600 meters. But what can I get rid of, boys and girls? Because they're trailing. That's right, the zeros. Okay, so let's try that. Let's figure out what it would be if we had 260 centimeters. Let's see what that problem would look like. So 260 centimeters. And I'm going from centimeters to meters, so I divide by 10 to the second, which is what number? 100. Can I use a zero trick? No, because I don't have enough zeros. So, decimal, at the end of the number, how many place values? To the left. So I end up with 2/60. But what can I get rid of because it doesn't change the value? That's correct. Okay, this is when it gets really fun. You know, I put that number line there, but I don't think we're going to use it. I just want to use those little tricks that we talked about earlier. So, on this one, I want you to highlight meters, draw an arrow, and then highlight centimeters. And you know me, I'm too lazy to get my highlighter out. So, I'm just going to put a box around it with my pen. Now, I'm renaming from meters to centimeters. So look back on your chart when we go meters to centimeters. What do? Multiply by 10 to the second. So this is quite simple. I'm going to take 4 and 5/10 times what number is 10 to the second power. And what trick will I use, boys and girls? Decimal. We have so many tricks, but I think we can remember them. Okay, so how many place values? Which way? Very good. So remember, my last zero that I put on there, I like it to be larger so that I make sure I get the zero or the decimal in the right place. I'm going to write the number. So my answer to this problem is 450 centimeters. If I wanted to answer in a sentence, I could say the ribbon would measure 450 centimeters. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Now, we're going to highlight millimeters, draw an arrow to meters. We're renaming from millimeters to meters. So, look back at your chart. Millimeters to meters. I will divide by 10 to the third power. Okay, so 67 millimeters divided by what number is 10 to the third? Decimal is at the end of the number. And how many place values will I move? Which way? Fill in with a 0. So my answer is 0.67. And the label is meters. We went from millimeters to meters. So how do you say that answer, boys and girls? Start with 60. 67 meters. Oh, 67 thousandths meters.